turned 80 years old 2 years ago. At first, it didn't feel like much had changed. I was still myself. Still had my morning coffee. Still remembered all the lyrics to my favorite songs. But slowly, almost without me noticing, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. No big crisis. No grand moment. Just small, quiet changes. A different kind of peace in the mornings. A new way of seeing time. A soft voice inside me that I had never taken the time to hear before. See, we spend most of our lives building things. Careers, families, homes, routines, habits. We spend decades trying to keep up, stay useful, be needed. And then one day you realize you're not chasing anymore. You're not proving anything. You're simply here. And that's where everything changes. After I turned 80, life started teaching me things I never learned in my younger years. Not in loud, obvious ways, but in quiet, honest moments that caught me off guard. Today, I want to share those things with you. These are not tips, not medical advice, not how-tos. They're truths. Gentle, sometimes surprising truths that revealed themselves when I finally slowed down enough to notice. There are 8 of them. 8 truths that helped me stop fearing age and start embracing it. 1. My mornings became sacred. It started gently. I began waking up before the sun, not from aches, not from anxiety, but from something quieter. It felt like a calling, almost. The world was still asleep, but I was wide awake. At first, I thought it was just a sleep problem, another item on the long list of things that change after 80. But then I noticed something else. I felt calm, clear, not tired at all, just still. I started rising early, 5:30, sometimes even before 5. I would sit in the same chair by the window, wrap myself in my old flannel robe, and hold a warm mug of coffee between my hands. The sky outside was always dark blue, just on the edge of light. And those moments, they became sacred. There's something holy about being awake before the world. No traffic, no television, just the soft hum of the heater, the creak of the floorboards, and the sound of my own thoughts finally making themselves heard. I began journaling again. Nothing fancy, just jotting down what I was grateful for. A good meal, a phone call from my daughter, a memory of my wife laughing in the kitchen 30 years ago. These mornings, they became the most honest part of my day. In my younger years, I rushed through mornings. I'd hit the ground running, already thinking of my to-do list before I even brushed my teeth. But now, mornings are when I return to myself. It is when I listen instead of react. And you know something? I've grown to believe that early mornings are not a burden of old age. They're a gift, a quiet invitation to begin again, every day with no expectations, just breath, memory, and presence. So if you're waking up earlier these days, don't fight it. Sit with it. Listen. Let the morning hold you. You might find, as I did, that it's not insomnia. It's something far more beautiful. Your spirit finally having the space to speak. 2. My circle got smaller, but wiser. There was a time when I was constantly surrounded by people. Work friends, church friends, neighbors, poker buddies, couples we vacationed with. My phone used to ring all the time. Invitations, requests, favors, conversations that went in circles, noise. And for years, I thought that was what it meant to be connected, to be known. But after 80, something changed, not all at once. Some friends moved away, some passed on, others, we just stopped calling each other. At first, I blamed myself. Was I growing distant? Boring? Had I become one of those out-of-touch old men I swore I'd never be? But then I realized I didn't miss the buzz. I missed meaning. These days, My phone is quieter. But when it rings, it's someone who knows my story. Not just the facts, but the feelings. My friend Carol calls once a week. We don't talk long, maybe 20 minutes. But there's a weight to it. We talk about our children, the loneliness, the days that feel too quiet, the things that make us laugh out of nowhere. When I visit my neighbor Edith, we don't need to talk much at all. We sit with our tea, watch the squirrels in the yard, and just exist in the same space. That kind of companionship doesn't ask for energy I no longer have. It gives it back to me. I don't chase friendships anymore. I let them come gently, stay honestly, and leave peacefully if they need to. The truth is, after 80, you start conserving your emotional energy. Not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You stop performing. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to keep everyone happy. And what you're left with is real connection. I used to be afraid of losing people. Now I've learned to treasure the ones who remain. My circle may be smaller, but every person in it feels like home. 3. Time stopped chasing me. I used to live by the clock. From my 20s through my 70s, my days were built around schedules. Wake up at 6:30, be at work by 8, pick up groceries on the way home, fix the screen door on the weekend. Even after I retired, I filled my time with projects, as if slowing down would somehow invite trouble. I thought if I didn't stay busy, I'd become irrelevant, forgotten, old. But something shifted after I turned 80. I remember the exact moment, actually. It was a Wednesday morning, and I had nothing planned. No appointments, no errands. I stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about it. I sat down in the garden with a blanket on my lap. The sun was coming through the trees just right. There was a single bluebird perched on the fence. And I just sat. No rush, no plan, just me and the moment. That was the day time stopped chasing me. You see, I'd spent decades running after the next thing, the next goal, the next improvement, always trying to make something worthwhile out of every hour. But now, I've learned that some of the most worthwhile hours are the ones where nothing happens at all. I'm not saying I stopped caring. I still make lists. I still have routines. But I no longer judge my days by how much I got done. I judge them by how fully I showed up. Was I present when my granddaughter called? Did I notice how the light changed through the curtains at noon? Did I feel peace while peeling an orange with no distractions? That's the real measure of time now. There's a strange gift in growing older, a kind of surrender that isn't giving up, but giving in. Giving in to life exactly as it is. Not what it used to be, not what it should be, but what it is, right now. And in that surrender, I've found something better than productivity. I've found peace. So, if you find yourself no longer in a rush, don't panic. That's not you becoming lazy. That's you becoming free. Time no longer owns you. You own it. At long last. 4. My mind slowed down, but my wisdom grew. I'll be honest, the memory slips scared me at first. I'd walk into the pantry and forget what I was looking for. I'd see a familiar face and struggle to recall their name. And it rattled me. I'd always prided myself on being sharp, remembering birthdays, directions, the punchlines to old jokes. So when those things started slipping, I worried that maybe I was fading. But over time, I noticed something else, something no one had warned me about. Even as my recall got slower, my understanding got deeper. I started seeing connections in things I never noticed before. I'd listen to my daughter talk about her work struggles, and even without knowing the technical terms or business lingo, I could sense the real issue. I could feel what was underneath her words, her exhaustion, her fear of not being good enough. And I knew just what to say, not because I was clever, but because I'd lived it. My thinking isn't fast anymore, but it's wide. I don't remember every detail, but I recognize patterns in people, in problems, in life. When I was younger, I thought intelligence was about having the right answers. Now I think wisdom is about asking the right questions and being okay if there's no clear answer at all. These days, I keep a small notebook in my shirt pocket. I write down appointments, names, reminders, not because I'm helpless, but because I've stopped wasting energy trying to remember things that paper can hold for me. That little habit frees up my mind for what matters more: presence, insight, empathy. And you know what's funny? People now come to me for advice more than ever. My son calls when he's stuck. My neighbor asks what I do in tough situations. Not because I'm the smartest guy around, but because I've learned how to listen. Really listen. I may forget where I left my glasses, but I won't forget how it felt to lose someone I loved, or what helped me through it. That kind of memory. It lives deeper than the brain. It lives in the soul. So no, my mind isn't what it once was, but in a strange way, it's become something better. It's become wise. 5. I stopped performing. Who are you when nobody is expecting anything from you? That question didn't come to me until well after my 80th birthday. One quiet afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, not rushing to get anywhere, not dressing up for a guest, not fixing my shirt collar to impress someone. I just looked at myself, really looked, and I asked, who am I now? For most of my life, I played roles: husband, father, employee, coach, deacon, neighbor. And I was proud of those roles. I gave them everything I had, but they came with expectations, spoken and unspoken. I had to be strong, be calm, be the problem solver, be the example. Even in retirement, I found myself trying to stay sharp, stay productive, stay useful. Like I owed the world an explanation for being old, but slowly, something shifted. My world got quieter, my calendar lightened, and those roles, they began to fall away. One morning, I stood in the backyard in my pajamas, barefoot in the dewy grass, coffee in hand. The birds were chirping, and the breeze had that early spring sweetness in it. And I thought, I don't have to be anything for anyone right now. That moment, that exact realization, was one of the most liberating of my life. I started choosing clothes for comfort, not impression. I began saying no to things I didn't want to do, without guilt. I stopped pretending to know answers I didn't have and simply said, I don't know, but I'll sit with you while we figure it out. I stopped performing, and in the quiet that followed, I found my real voice. It was softer than I expected, a little slower, a little uncertain, but it was mine. Honest, gentle, sometimes funny, sometimes sad, but always real. That voice started showing up in my conversations with my daughter. When I finally told her that I felt lonely sometimes, even when the house was full, it showed up in letters I wrote to old friends, not trying to sound wise, just trying to sound like me. You see, when no one's expecting anything, you finally have permission to be everything you are, not just the polished parts, but the ordinary, tender, tired, joyful, honest parts too. And let me tell you, there's something magnetic about that kind of realness. People feel it. They lean in. They trust it. Because deep down, we're all tired of pretending. So if you've felt lately like you don't quite fit the mold anymore, maybe that's not a problem. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it's your soul whispering, you don't have to perform, you just have to be. And that, my friend, is enough. 6. Old joys came back to find me. It started with a drawer, one I hadn't opened in maybe 30 years. I was cleaning out the hall closet, not because I had to, but because the day felt long and I had energy to spare. Tucked way in the back, beneath some yellowed newspapers and mismatched buttons, I found a little wooden box. Inside were a few broken pencils, some old guitar picks, and a tiny watercolor palette. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it for a while. That box brought back something I had long forgotten. I used to paint. Not professionally, not even well. But when I was younger, before marriage, before children, before life got serious, I would paint late at night, sometimes until the birds started singing. I painted feelings more than things, moods, moments, shadows. I hadn't thought about that version of myself in decades. That night, I went on the internet and ordered a new watercolor set. The first brushstroke felt awkward. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. But once I got going, it felt like reconnecting with an old friend. Not a perfect one. Not someone I had kept in touch with. But someone who remembered me anyway. That was the first joy that came back. Then came music. I started sitting out on the back porch with my harmonica. Just me and the breeze. No audience, no performance. Just sound. Just breath. Just memory. Then came baking. My wife used to bake cinnamon rolls on cold mornings. The smell would wake the whole house. I hadn't tried to make them since she passed. But one cloudy Tuesday, I did. It took 2 tries. The dough was uneven. But when I took that first bite, I cried, not because of the taste, but because of the feeling. She was there with me, in that warmth, in that sugar, in that soft swirl of cinnamon. After 80, joy doesn't come loud anymore. It doesn't knock on the door with balloons and fanfare. It creeps in through the back screen door. It waits patiently on the porch until you notice it. It shows up in tiny things. The sound of wind chimes, the smell of fresh laundry, the first sip of cold lemonade on a summer afternoon. I used to think joy was something I had to chase. Now I know. It never left. It was just waiting for me to slow down long enough to remember where I'd left it. So if there's something you used to love, painting, dancing, cooking, singing, even if it's been decades, try it again. You may be slower, you may be rusty, you may mess it up completely, but you'll feel alive. And at this age, feeling alive is the most beautiful kind of joy there is. 7. I learned to speak less and mean more. I used to talk a lot, not in a loud or attention-seeking way, but I filled silence with words. I filled discomfort with explanations. I filled quiet moments with advice, suggestions, instructions. I thought it was helpful. I thought it was my job. Maybe it was, once. When you're a father, a boss, a neighbor, a friend, people expect you to have something to say. And I usually did. I was quick to chime in, quick to offer a solution, quick to smooth over the awkwardness with a story or a joke. But after I turned 80, I noticed something different happening. I'd start a sentence and then stop halfway through, not because I forgot what I was saying, but because I realized it didn't need to be said, at least not right then. I started choosing my words more carefully, not out of fear, but out of intention. I began letting pauses exist between sentences, letting others speak without rushing to respond, letting silence sit like an old friend at the table. At first, it felt strange, almost like I was disappearing from conversations. But something interesting happened. People started leaning in more, listening more closely, taking my words more seriously when I did speak. My daughter told me one afternoon, "Dad, when you say something now, I really hear it. It stays with me." And that made me think, maybe I used to say too much, just to prove I had something to offer. Maybe now I finally trust that I do, even if I say nothing at all. There's a kind of power in restraint that I never understood in my younger years. When I was in my 50s, I believed leadership was about direction. Now I believe it's about presence. And I've come to believe that older age gives us the gift of selective energy. We don't waste our breath on things that don't matter. We don't argue to win. We speak to connect, to affirm, to pass down something we've earned through quiet years and hard lessons. These days, when I'm with someone younger, one of my grandkids, or even the young man who helps mow my lawn, I don't try to teach them anything. I just sit with them, let them talk, let them process. And when I do say something, it's usually a question, not an answer. Something like, "How did that feel?" Or, "What does your gut tell you?" Or sometimes just, "That sounds hard." Because truth is, most people don't need fixing. They just need to be heard. And I can do that now, not because I'm wise or trained, but because I've finally quieted the noise inside me. There's one more thing I've noticed. I don't fill my own head with so many thoughts anymore. I used to mentally rehearse conversations, argue in my mind with people who weren't even there, relive old regrets, plan what I'd say next. But now, I'm just here, present, listening, responding only when I mean it, and meaning it every time I do. So if you're finding yourself quieter these days, don't think of it as fading. Think of it as refining. You're not saying less because you have less to offer. You're saying less because you finally understand what's worth saying. 8. I discovered the freedom of enough. When I was younger, I was always reaching for more money, more stability, more comfort, more validation, more purpose, more answers. There was always something to chase, a project to finish, a debt to pay, a dream to prove. And then I turned 80, and all that reaching just stopped. Not because I gave up, but because I looked around one morning, sitting in my favorite chair, coffee in hand, and quietly whispered to myself, "This is enough." The sun was coming through the curtains just right. The birds outside were singing their usual songs. My knees ached a little, sure. The house creaked with age, just like I do. But I felt full. Not in a grand or dramatic way. Just quietly, deeply enough. That word, enough, has become my compass these days. It's changed how I eat, how I talk, how I love. I used to feel like I had to keep up. With trends, with conversations, with expectations. Now I know I don't have to keep up with anything. I just have to be here. I don't need a bigger house. I need warmth in the one I have. I don't need more friends. I need a few who truly see me. I don't need to impress my grandkids. I just need to listen to them. I don't need to be remembered by many. I just hope to be remembered well. This isn't about settling. It's about releasing the grip on more. The endless striving that wears us down without us noticing. And what's beautiful is, once you realize you're enough, you start seeing everything else as enough too. You stop judging. You stop comparing. You stop resenting time for what it's taken, and start thanking it for what it's left behind. I'm not the man I was at 40, but I wouldn't trade the peace I have now for all the energy I had back then. There's a kind of soft joy that comes with this acceptance, a sweetness in the quiet, a dignity in the slowness, a sense of finally arriving in your own life after decades of running through it. Sometimes I sit in my chair and just watch the light shift across the wall. I listen to the floor settle beneath me. I breathe, and I think, this is it. This is life. It doesn't have to be anything more than this. So if you've spent your years chasing, proving, building, maybe now is the time to let go. Not of hope, not of love, but of pressure, of expectation, of the idea that you need to be anything other than who you are right now. Because who you are, wrinkles, wobbly steps, weathered hands, full heart, is more than enough. And you've earned every inch of that truth. Well, if you've made it with me through these 8 quiet truths, I just want to say thank you. Truly. Not just for listening, but for showing up, for being willing to reflect, for being brave enough to feel. Because I know getting older is not always easy. It brings aches, it brings loss, it brings change that no one fully prepares us for. But it also brings something else: clarity, wisdom, depth, grace. A kind of quiet, knowing that only comes with time. And if you felt even one of these truths in your bones, if something I said reminded you of your own story, your own turning point, your own quiet morning, then maybe, just maybe, we're walking this road together, you and I. So, before we part, I'd love to ask you something. Which of these truths have you felt lately in your own life? Which one surprised you? Which one brought you peace? Leave a comment. You never know who your words might touch. And if you know someone, a sister, a friend, a neighbor, who's also walking this chapter of life, share this with her. She might need to hear it today. And if this kind of conversation speaks to your heart, I'd be honored if you joined me again. Subscribe to this channel for more reflections, more stories, more reminders that aging is not the end of the story. It's a whole new chapter, and it's worth telling well. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You've come a long way, and you are, now and always, more than enough.